What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Lifestyle Nutrition Podcast, and we got another special episode for you today. I'm so excited to bring just a great friend. Grateful for the friendship we've been able to develop here over the last few months. Finally meeting in person here just a few weeks ago, and she's going to come on. We're going to talk about a lot of different things within health, fitness, nutrition, fat loss, and just give you tons of value today. And so, please welcome to the podcast, Gillian Graessle. Is that the way to say your last name? I never asked you.
It's Graessle.
Graessle. I've never asked you how to say your last name. And so I was like, oh shit. Honestly, I just thought about that right before I actually started saying it. I was like, oh shit. I probably should have confirmed how to say your last name. We've been hanging out last weekend. We were all hanging out and talking all the time. And then I never even asked you how to say your last name.
No, it's fine. No one, I've never met anyone who's pronounced it right the first time. So it's fine.
That's mine. Can you see my name here on the thing?
Yeah.
Take a guess at how you say my last name.
I love Wojo, but okay. Wojciechowski?
It's pretty damn good. Wojciechowski.
Wojciechowski.
Yeah. And so same thing, both for our last names. It'd be tough for anybody ever to get them on the first try. But
yeah,
I'm honestly so pumped to have you on. I know we've been talking a lot. We meet every few weeks to do some sales practice and just chat about how we can both get a little bit better. You talked me off a ledge earlier today, just me kind of getting in my whole deal. But I'd love for you to start just by sharing your story of just how you got into coaching, how you got into the health and fitness space. I know it's an awesome story.
Yeah, sure. It's kind of long, but I guess I'll just start. Basically, I kind of started getting into, I guess if you want to say health and fitness, from a place of self-hate for sure. It started off with basically just trying to be the skinniest version of myself. I think it was at a time where that was the social societal norm, and that's what everyone was saying, you need to be super thin in order to be pretty. And I just had a lot of self-esteem issues rooted from my childhood, and I just never thought I was really good enough. So I was like, all right, let me try to get super skinny because then I'll like myself. So I started doing a bunch of cardio. This is where my cardio bunny phase kind of came in. This is when Victoria's Secret Angel Thin was super in as well. So I just did a bunch of cardio. I would go on runs. I would, do the elliptical or the treadmill for an hour every day, stuff like that. And then at the same time, I'd also really, really restrict myself. So I started to develop a pretty unhealthy relationship with both exercise and eating from an early age. So I'd say this is probably around my sophomore year of high school where I started this. I played sports my whole life. I played soccer and then I played field hockey in high school. And I think because of also dealing with this eating stuff, my performance on the field was really screwed up because I didn't have energy, or I just maybe binged or something. So basically I went through the restrictive. I tried all the diets. I tried vegan, vegetarian, pescatarian, just to try to get super, super skinny. And I would weigh myself every day just to try to get myself under 100 pounds. That was my goal. And then at some point I kind of just realized, okay, this isn't sustainable. And because field hockey season was coming around, I kind of used it as an excuse as I can eat whatever I want because I'm going to be running a bunch. It makes sense. And that led to my binge eating because I was restricting for so long. I was really restricting and abusing intermittent fasting, and restricting to the point where I really lost all my hunger signals. And if I ate I remember on vacation I ate one chicken finger and one French fry, and I was I am so full, I literally can't eat anymore because I was just that restrictive with everything. So once I started introducing food again, I just completely started binging towards junior year of high school. And then around my senior year I started restricting again. And then finally when I was a senior in high school going into college during the summer, I found Whitney Simmons' YouTube channel, and I realized like for the first time, I think getting thicker was a little bit more in. Also, just like having girls like having butts was more in. And I saw her YouTube channel, and I also recently had like a comment. Like I grew up like super insecure, super depressed, things like that. And like one of my friends, I remember like they made a comment. They're like, "Yeah, like Jill has literally no ass," and I was like, "Fuck, I don't know if I can curse in here, sorry," but
I
I
curse
was
all the
like, oh, okay. I was like, oh, great. Now another insecurity that I didn't know I had. Great. Awesome. So I was like now determined. I was like, all right, now I need to like get a butt. I need to do these things because that will make me accepted, right? That'll make guys like me. That'll make me like me. So I saw Whitney Simmons' YouTube channel, and I loved her body and I loved what she was portraying. And for the first time in my life, I saw her be like, okay, you need to lift weights to get, like, you can achieve this, you can do it, gotta start lifting. You also need to eat. And like, this was the first time, like, my world was like shattered because I was like, holy shit, like, I like not only can I eat, but like I need to eat to like achieve these goals. And everyone was always telling you, especially women, like you need to restrict, you need to restrict. So it was like game over for me. I was too anxious and nervous to go to a real gym, and luckily my dad had a gym in the basement. Um, so I started doing only Whitney Simmons workouts for the first 6 months of my lifting career. And then I literally just watched all her videos. I would work out in the basement. I would do the weights. I would start focusing on eating my protein, things like that. And I actually started to see some changes. And I loved it. And after that, like I could not, I literally couldn't stop. I was so addicted to to lifting weights. And I, granted, it wasn't super healthy even for a while until I kind of started to learn really like, until I started to try to become a nutrition and fitness coach and realized like, okay, I need to like get some of this stuff under control. And I started to understand the importance of what each macro actually does for your body, what fueling your body actually looks like, right? Eating healthy, balanced meals, because I was still dealing with binging even when I looked really good, right? Like to a lot of people. And I think that's something that's kind of scary is like in the fitness space, there's a lot of disordered eating going around. There's like a lot of unhealthy obsession with exercise, but they look really fucking good. So people don't always realize like what's going on behind closed doors. Um, and it took me like a few years before I started to actually be able to kind of feel like I'm in a healthy place with like food and fitness. So yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, that's an amazing story of just like going from just with the disordered eating patterns, really restricting heavily to finally just stumbling upon a YouTube channel. And what, for everybody out there listening, like what did Whitney Simmons's workouts consist of that you started doing then?
Yeah, so it was literally just like weight training. So it was like, here's a leg day, here's an arm day, here's an upper body day. So just like body split workouts. So to this day, I still love like push pull legs is like my favorite split. Um, and yeah, that's like what I started. I just literally, I think I started like, I went full send into this. I was definitely still like, I wasn't taking enough rest and stuff like that. But that's something you learn. And also the value of like having a coach is so you don't have to go through like the amount of years and trial and error that it took me to actually get to a healthy place. Um, but yeah, that was just like her workouts, like more like sculpting kind of stuff.
I love it. Yeah. And I think what you said about a lot of these people that a lot of just the general population looks up to as like, oh my God, what an amazing physique. What, these amazing workouts and stuff like that. I'm not saying, Whitney Simmons, but like a lot of these people are doing unhealthy things to get those bodies, right? Like I know for me, just kind of thinking about what I did to get my body a while back was like, I was so obsessed like you with like that external just validation of like trying to do it for the things that I thought it would make me, I thought it would make me feel so much better. I thought it would make me, get more girls, get, just have more like authority, like all this stuff that it really didn't end up doing. And I was doing just crazy stuff to get this, like sometimes 2-a-day workouts, 6-7 days a week, tons of cardio, just insane workouts, like restricting, like all this stuff. And and it's like you're putting in all this effort and you just behind the scenes you're just mentally and physically just drained.
Yeah, literally. Like, I remember even like when I looked really good, I was hitting my protein goal and I was tracking my macro. I wasn't tracking my macros actually. I was just tracking my protein. I had no idea the value of carb and fat, especially fat for girls is super important for your hormones. My acne was really bad. I was living off of protein supplements. Like, literally, I'd have like a protein bar, like a protein shake, like anything protein or dairy. And then literally my carbs and my fats would be so low, but I'd be like, I hit my protein, like I'm good. And then I was like wondering why I was binging like consistently all of the time still. Um, and I'm not kidding, I could literally clear like a gallon of ice or like a half a gallon of like ice cream, like when I was in those phases.
That's that big like tub.
Yeah, like I've literally like just sat there and like cleared them and still like wanted more.
I guess that just goes to show, right? Like when you do the restriction, it's crazy like what can happen. So I'm glad you got out of that. And I'm curious, like just what was, you talked about those exercises and just the way of like finally almost that reframe for you of you don't have to restrict yourself anymore. You can finally actually consume food and there's another way to this like body that you want. How did you end up starting to develop a better relationship with food over this time?
I think initially it started with just finding like Whitney Simmons stuff, right? Just like lifting in general. Okay, I was like, okay, now I have to eat. So I started to focus on my protein at least. At least I was doing that. I was still dealing with binging, but I was trying to focus on getting like my food and my protein in. And then I think like honestly, the first time I ever cured my binging was when I went into a bulking phase. And then you're like so full, but also like, you're like, now I'm showing myself to till I'm like so full I can't like eat anymore. And I wish I had more, I think, guidance with the phases when I first did them, because I definitely would have done them differently. But then when every time I would go to cut, like I felt like the bad behaviors would come back up and like the binge restrict and like, so it really wasn't until the end of until I graduated college, because I wanted to go into health and fitness, where I started to get my certifications for like nutrition and to be able to coach people. And I was like, oh, like fats are really important for this. And like carbs give you energy. What a concept. So I started to learn like what a balanced plate was and what that looks like. And then I was like, oh, okay, like I gotta like kind of like, walk the walk and talk the talk, but also walk the walk. So if I'm promoting this lifestyle for my clients and like I'm not even doing that, or like, and I'm still dealing with this, I'm like, that's not good. I need to be able to kind of relate to them and like show them that this is possible and like you can eat healthy and it doesn't need to like completely suck, or like you'll still be able to reach your goals and stuff like that, because I kind of felt like a little bit of a fraud sometimes because I was still dealing with all of these irregular eating habits and patterns that I was like, okay, so like this is what it means to have like a balanced plate. And I started to practice it. And I think I was also just really fed up with the binge, the restrict, right? Like because not only are you dealing with just binging and restricting, but like the emotional side effects of that, right? Like intense mood swings, like being really cold all the time, being so food obsessed, like it literally like takes over your life. And I remember like when I kind of just like stopped like focusing on that, it was almost like, oh shit, like who even am I? Like when I'm not like hyper focused on like food and working out, like it's like crazy. Um, so yeah, that's kind of like what helped me was actually just getting the education in it. So that way I could kind of practice it and then fuel my body properly and learn about fiber and the importance of all the micronutrients and stuff like that. And then I was like, oh wow, like I'm not like finding that, because I'm also stopped intermittent fasting. That was really horrible for me. I mean, it works for some people, I guess. But that was not great, especially for women, I think, just with our hormones and stuff like that. So when I just started to let myself eat breakfast, which was huge, and then have the balanced meals throughout the day, I realized like, oh, I don't have a huge tendency to binge because I eat at a normal time today.
No, I relate a lot with that. I used to do, because we like our story is actually like somewhat similar as far as just like certain parts of it, at least, where the binge and restrict type thing, like I used to try to do intermittent fasting too. Like I was like, I can't eat until noon. And then I would just be like thinking about food the whole time. And just like every meal after that would be like, okay, what is the next meal? I remember like looking at my fitness pal and like consistently adjusting it. It's like, no, I'd rather have this at noon. And then like kind of like putting all this stuff together. And it's like, it's no way to live, right? It's like you don't even realize what you're doing necessarily until you look back on it. And you're like, holy crap. Like I was just constantly focused. Like, I don't know about you, but like my mindset would be when I had like an invite to some place, it was like my mind would go to like, well, what was the food going to be like there? Right. Like, am I going to be able to stay on like my whole eating plan while I go there? And like, sometimes I would say no to them because I was like, you know what? I'm just not ready to go eat like just garbage today. Like I want to eat like 100% quality foods and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. I thinking about vacations, like I put my family through hell. Like honestly, I would literally like cry. I remember like my dad like forced me to eat on like a family vacation because like I was gonna be on the beach. I was like, I don't want to eat, and 12 was like still early for me to eat. Like I know that was like when you're supposed to cut off, but like I would push it and I would push it and I'd push it. And I remember there was a day I went like over 24 hours without eating, and I like was so proud of myself. Like I thought like I was so sick. Like I was like, "Oh my god, look at me go. I'm such a skinny legend." Like I'm like, it's something's going on there.
I know. I see. Like I've been in some of these like intermittent fasting groups on Facebook before, and there's like people doing like 3-4 day fasts in there, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I mean, like intermittent fasting, like you said, it's perfectly fine for certain people, right? If that works with your schedule, awesome. But like for me, just like you, it led to binging. Like I
Yeah.
just I needed to eat in the morning, or at least like sometime. Like I generally I don't eat right away when I get up, but like I'll eat at like 7 or 8, which is like maybe 3-4 hours after getting up, because I'm just not hungry right away in the morning. But like I just that's still like 7 or 8 a.m. is like I used to try to wait till like 10 a.m. some days, and it's like it was just hell trying to get there. And so, but I'm curious, like you said, balanced meals, and I'm just curious for everybody out there as well. Like, what do you kind of call a balanced meal? Like, what does that like plate look like to you when you look at that?
Yeah, so in a perfect world, I think a balanced plate would look like having your portion of protein, a carb, a healthy fat, and then ideally some fiber in the form of either like a fruit or a vegetable. And that's like basically the plate method, if you've ever heard of that. And that's what I try to promote to like my clients a lot, and that's what I try to do for myself too. And I always feel like I digest food the best. I feel good, and it's always whole foods, which we try to promote a ton, and it's not the processed like packaged foods and stuff like that. So you just feel so much better, and your digestion and your blood sugar, all of that just like goes together really nice, and you keep that protein high, and it's really actually easy to hit the protein goal when you focus on doing it like that.
Yeah, just like build around that protein source, keep that balanced plate. Yeah, it's crazy like how much better you do feel just in sleeping, right? Like I think that's kind of even the biggest thing. It's like, okay, like you get all this stuff, you get all these micronutrients from the fruits, the veggies, the quality, just sources of protein, carbs, fats. Like you get better sleep at night, and then boom, we have more energy. And then like we can get a better workout in. And it's like it's crazy just that compounding that happens once you start getting that ball rolling.
Yeah, I think that's so funny you talk about the sleep thing too, because another thing I used to abuse was caffeine like so much. Even still, I'm a way better, but I was like, oh, if I realized too with the intermittent fasting, I was like, if I eat breakfast, like I literally have energy. Like what a concept! Like I have the energy to like get through my day. I don't need like caffeine. I'm like caffeinated, like trying to suppress my hunger, and just like not able to sleep. And it's just like it just keeps this like horrible cycle where you can't sleep, so you need more caffeine, and then just eat breakfast.
Yeah.
Like,
No, you heard it here. You heard it here first. Eat breakfast. Get a good breakfast in, a quality breakfast in. Get your day going. Honestly, it's crazy. now, because we both used to be in that same camp of like thinking that the eating less was the goal. Like that was like what was going to get us to our end goal, our body that we wanted to, like, we weren't really focused on health. Let's be honest. We were focused on the body. Right.
Yeah.
And we thought that was the key, but it is crazy just kind of going back that a little bit, just that compounding of like, when you do have more energy, the better decisions that you make,
Mm-hmm.
and you're more likely to get a workout in and move more, which generally can lead to maybe more quality food choices throughout the day. And like, I hear this from my clients all the time where it's like, oh yeah, I had more energy. And then I moved, like, and I got more steps in. And then, you know what, I felt like I should probably get a good meal in, like, and it's like, you don't even necessarily even notice that just by getting that one ball rolling of getting more sleep, that it can compound into all of these amazing choices throughout the day.
Yeah, no, it's insane. Mind Pump always says like this quote that's like, um, if you chase aesthetics, like good health doesn't always follow. When you chase good health, aesthetics follows. And I'm just like, yeah, that's like so true. Like once you start to like treat yourself like in a form of looking at it from a health perspective, you just, like you said, you build these healthy patterns, you feel good, so you move better. Also, like the saying, like movement creates momentum. So you start to move differently, and that momentum just picks up throughout the day, and you just start to make better choices overall.
No, 100%. Yeah, couldn't have said it better. I think that's amazing. And I'm curious. So, like, I know that you work a lot with like mindset, mental side of health and fat loss. And I'm just curious, like, why do you think that that's so important just to this whole, just whatever your goal is, whether that is like optimal health, whether that is fat loss, maybe muscle gain, like, how does mindset play into that whole formula there?
Yeah, I think it's so, so, so important because I think it just touches me in a place where I know I came from a place of self hate, and what that caused was years of disordered eating and years of unhealthy behaviors and patterns. And had I had like a coach or someone to guide me in the right direction and get to the root cause of the problem and realize, oh, okay, it's not just like I need to look shredded. Like, no, it's like I need to look shredded because deep down I feel inadequate if I'm not, or I don't feel like I'm worth it, right? So it's like really uncovering that. And obviously, I think, getting a good coach and also a therapist in combination would be really awesome. So you can work on that inner healing stuff. And my coaching, my coaching business is called like Enough Fitness. So it's like reminding people you are always enough. So you don't need to change because you hate yourself. Like you are always going to be good enough just as who you are. And I feel like I've always wished someone could have told me that because I never thought I was good enough. So I think a lot of the time, and like we're learning with NCI, is just the importance of connection and mindset and being there for your clients. Is like people know somewhat of what to do to like lose weight or go in the right direction to an extent, right? Or they could Google it if they really wanted to. Really, what they need is someone to guide them and that support more than anything most of the time. And so I think just being able to connect with like your clients and be there for them and be like a support system and understand like what their struggles are and validating them is like one of the most important things to actually elicit change and also to like help people through what they're going through, because I think if they don't think you're in their corner, they don't really feel like they don't really want to change, but they want to use you as like another excuse as to why they quit and why it didn't work for them and why it failed.
First off, the message that you have, like just making sure that people know that they're enough, I think is amazing, because it's like there's not a lot of that going on out there, right? Like it's a lot of people come from just like not feeling enough. I know myself included, and that's a tough thing to get by. And how do you kind of go about then with your clients? Say they are in that situation, or say they do have some of these other just mental or like mindset holdbacks going on, like in the form of false beliefs. Like, what is like step one that you go about with your clients to help them move forward?
Yeah, so step one, always, I will always recommend a therapist for the most part. I think everyone in the world, especially if you say you don't need one, everyone needs a therapist at least some point in their life. But also, I guess it really just depends on the client and like what they are actually struggling with, like internally, because I think a lot of it really is just like reminding them that like you are enough. Like you got this, you're 100% capable, and also meeting them where they're at too. Like, okay, like, what are you willing to do? What are you not willing to do? Like, and making sure that they know you're not just going to feed them like a plan and be like, follow it, push them, do it, do it, do it, right? Because they're doing that to themselves a lot of the time. They're beating themselves up. Right, if they're coming from a place of self-hate, they're using exercise as punishment. So they really need you to rewire their brain and let them know, like, hey, like, it's so awesome you got your water in, like, that's so awesome, right? Or like, hey, if they're, feeling really like tired, right? It's like, oh, okay, why don't we just do some walking, right? Stress is super high, right? Let's kind of dial back a little bit. And it's really just teaching them how to actually take care of themselves instead of looking at diet culture and working out as a place of like, I need to punish myself or I'm not worthy, which is why I need to restrict, which is why I need to work out super hard, right? And it's really just having someone in their corner and reminding them, like, hey, like, let's actually learn how to take care of yourself and not use this as punishment.
Having them, making sure they know that they're good enough, supporting them throughout the journey, meeting them where they're at. I think that's an amazing point as well. Like it's so easy to think that you need to go from 0 to 100, right? Like you see it a lot of times with New Year's resolutioners, like it's going from 0 workouts a week to 5 workouts a week, right? And I think it's awesome that you said that. Like, what are you willing to do? And people out there ask yourself this question, like, what are you willing to commit to get to your goal? And just also on the same side of things, like ask yourself, like, what can you be consistent with too? Because I think those are almost two different questions, right? Like, what can you commit to and what can you be consistent with? Find the middle ground between those two, because that's going to be the sweet spot. You can always build on it, but I thought those are all just amazing tips there on just how to break through. The therapy as well. Like I think therapy is amazing too. I got so much benefits from just talking to somebody as well. So I can't recommend it enough. And, kind of getting on to, I know we talked a little bit earlier about like sculpting your body and how that really helped you to start getting into a better place with all these things and really got you into the health and fitness industry and wanting to relay your message on to other people and make sure that they know that they don't have to keep restricting and going through the same stuff that you did. How did you go about how do you go about this now? Like sculpting your body, like how would you explain that to somebody and like what that all consists of?
Yeah, so I think, well, it really will come down to mostly like two things, or I guess three things, right? It's like your training, your nutrition, and your accountability. And I think we're all in different phases, right? Not everyone is going to be able to get to certain levels, like depending on what your goals are and what you're like willing to do also. So it's like setting realistic expectations with yourself, but it's really just going to be, all right, let's go through. Most of the time, depending on where your metabolism is at, we'll probably have to do like a reverse diet. In some cases, we'll go through like a bulk. It just kind of depends on the person, how new they are to fitness. I know for me, I just had so much fun going through the phases of like a bulk and a cut because of the fact that like just seeing your body change and like being committed to something and seeing the results like really come on was like one of the coolest things ever for me. And then I eventually finally got to a place where I was like, I'm pretty like satisfied with my physique and I'm kind of exhausted from going through like bulks and cuts. So what now, right? And it's like that maintenance phase. I remember for me too, when I like first didn't do like a bulk or a cut again, it was, again, I tied so much of my identity to like being so hyper focused on exercise and food that it was like what do I do with myself? Like, who am I if I don't do this? And it's really like not everyone is going to need to go through like an intense bulking phase that you might see on like social media, right? For the average person, you may just need to do a reverse diet and go through, making sure that you're doing your compound lifts and getting stronger and doing progressive overload, right? Cycling and phasing your workouts out every 4 to 6 weeks. And then once you do that, then we can go into like a deficit or a cutting phase where we start to lose the fat and start to reveal some of that muscle that we have built under there. And really, then at that point, we could just go into that lifestyle integration, right? Where you just start to learn how to maintain the physique that you've created. But I think in a lot of cases, it'll come in a lot of different phases, right? Like I've bulked and cut like 5 or 6 different times at this point in my life, right? It's a really slow process. And if you want to keep building and keep like revealing, right? It just, you got to go through the phase. Like it's not a one and done for a lot of people, depending on also how far you're willing and wanting to take the physique and the aesthetics of it. But it's just something you kind of you keep going through. And then until you get to a point where you're like, yeah, I'm like really satisfied. And I kind of just want to maintain. And from there you eat pretty much at maintenance or a little bit above maintenance, try to get your maintenance as high as you can and keep training for hypertrophy for the most part. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, I think a lot of people don't even know that there is another phase, right? You just, for a long time, everybody's stuck in that fat loss, that weight loss phase, like in a deficit. But, the importance is just crazy, like the results you can get just by doing all these other things. And like the craziest thing, right, is like that, a lot of time should be spent at that maintenance, right? Like where, like a lot of people spend so much of their time in a deficit that they're putting so much stress out of their bodies. And it's like the maintenance is where your body's able to recover. So I love that you said like just all the different type of phases you can cycle through. And I'm like, how long do you generally cycle through these phases?
For myself or for my clients? Because I think it depends.
Let's say both. Let's say like somebody who is really their goal is fat loss, right? Like they're trying to lose, let's say 50 pounds, like, and they come to you under eating. Like what kind of, how would you bring them through this type of just cycling of phases there?
Yeah, so it really, really depends. I think it just depends so much on the person, how long they've been dieting for, like where they're at metabolically, right? Like, so I like to give like, I think just for like ease of people's mind and to understand what a timeline would potentially look like is like about 90 days, right? In each phase, give or take, depending on your compliance too, because that's huge, right? So, I mean, hey, we could do all of this in 90 days with 100% compliance. Like, so it's like, obviously it just depends on like how compliant the client is also. And it's going to take longer depending on where you're at. And I also think that like, someone who's trying to lose like a lot of weight and just trying to like restore their metabolism first and then go into a dieting phase, like they might be in a dieting phase for longer than someone that's trying to lose 10 pounds, right? And it's okay. And that doesn't necessarily make it unhealthy as long as you're implementing the correct strategies like diet breaks, refeeds, and you're breaking it up, right? So it just depends. But I like to give like that 90 days for like the different phases. For me, I would always bulk for like 6 months at least, just because it's also like it's such a slow process to build muscle. But also I think at where I'm at now, I probably wouldn't bulk for that long just because I just wouldn't want to. And then cutting, yeah, I usually will diet for like 3 months.
And like when you do like 6 months of bulking, are you doing like what kind of surplus are you eating in, or are you tracking? Are you not tracking? Like what are you doing there?
Yeah, so I like to track. Typically I would start with like a 3 to like 500 calorie increase, or if you want to use like percentage, like doing like a 15 to 20% increase in your calories and going from there. I'm also someone where I do definitely track, but because I've tracked for so long, I can almost do both kind of intuitively also. But no, tracking is definitely super, super important and like vital, especially if you don't know your numbers at all. So that's kind of like what I do. I like to use like the percentages, but also like a slower bulk. Maybe we start with like a 200 calorie increase and like increase as needed. I look at like a cut and a bulk, like they're essentially the exact same thing in the opposite direction.
And do you do like any sort of like ease into these with your clients, or do you just go like right into them?
It really will depend on the client because of the fact that I would say there's like a lot of clients that don't want to bulk or don't need to bulk. Like a reverse diet is good. So I usually start with just like a reverse diet for most people because most people are under eating and just trying to build your maintenance up. And then from there, like depending on what your goals are and where you're at, we could go into a fat loss phase and then try to integrate it into like your life and work on like being more intuitive and things like that as well. But then I do have girls that come to me that are like, I want to put on weight. And I'm like, sick. Like, I'll go through a reverse with them first too, and then a reverse into a bulk.
That's fun. I love it. Yeah. Like when you kind of like, when you start getting like the muscle put on and you start seeing, I mean, also like in the gym, when you start seeing like the numbers go up and stuff, because it's crazy. Like, isn't it, when you are like eating at maintenance or in your calorie deficit, like just how much less you're able to push in the gym. But like when you get into that bulk, you got like 300, 500 more calories a day coming in, like you can start to get those numbers up and you starts to feel pretty good.
It is so cool, like the strength gains and all of that. But I'm definitely at a place now where I will just spend the majority of my time at maintenance, and then like maybe in a slight surplus, like a little bit leading up until when I'm going to get ready to cut. So that way I know my maintenance is high. So I have a lot to work with, and my like cutting calories are still pretty high, like higher than most people's, I feel.
Yeah, that's the same thing with me. Honestly, like I haven't tracked in a while because I think it's just tedious right now and I just don't feel like doing it. Like I totally get it. Like it's for people, it can be definitely tedious. I know a lot of like I've had clients like say, "Oh, this sucks," whatever. Like, yeah. And it does, but it also does get you to your goal a lot quicker because you're going to be able to be a lot more precise. Because honestly, when we've tracked for so long, like I tracked for like 5 years or whatever, probably more than that before I kind of quit. And sometimes I'll go back to it because if I don't track, sometimes I get into a place where I'm eating too low because my maintenance is 4,100 calories. And so like which is absurd, Like, people are like, oh, you fucking, like, oh, you're complaining about that. Like, I'm like, it sucks sometimes. Like, it's like not easy to eat that many calories. And like, that's over like a long period of time of like working out and eating like in a certain way. But it's like, I definitely feel you. Like it's, for me, like if I don't eat enough, like I lose weight like quickly. Like I had a point in time where I lost like 7 or 8 pounds. Like this is like a few months ago because I was just not, like, I guess I wasn't eating enough, and I don't weigh myself a lot. So like I stepped on the scale, I was like, oh shit. I was like, I guess I was eating in a calorie deficit.
Oh wow, yeah, no, it's insane to eat. Like I think that's the other thing, like people forget to like respect, like going through a bulk or having like a high maintenance, like that takes a lot of work. Like it is not easy to like hit those numbers all of the time or eat like that much food, especially when it's like whole foods, right? And it's not like you're just eating a bunch of like candy or stuff like that. Because I think for me too, like when I'm in like a maintenance phase, I'm a lot more lenient and I'm not always tracking. Like I just took a break from tracking. And I know my protein probably slips off a little bit too. Like I try, but it's just hard. Like even we can eyeball pretty well, I'm sure. But when you're tracking, like for right now I'm in a deficit, so I'm trying to lose fat. So now I'm tracking and I brought it back. But at some point it's like no one wants to track for like the rest of their life.
Yeah. And what do you do? Like, if you're trying to get somebody to intuitively, like they're like, okay, I don't want to track anymore, right? They're down to their goal. They're finally to like the maintenance phase where it's like, okay, let's teach you how to sustain this for life. What are some things that you work on with them to allow them to be able to move from the tracking to the more intuitive approach?
I like to say, like, first of all, like when you're tracking, like you should be like learning how to eyeball things to an extent, right? Like, all right, this is 4 ounces of chicken, right? This is so you start to understand what a serving size even looks like. Because I remember that was like the most mind-blowing thing for me, like pouring like something like maple syrup or something. I was like, oh my God, that's a serving. Like when you weigh it out, like I was eating so much.
That's 150 calories.
Yeah. So, what I do for them is just like I want them to build that awareness, and then all right, so basically you kind of know what you eat at your maintenance, like what are the meals you eat, what are your portion sizes, and then like just like kind of keep doing that, and just don't track it, see how that goes, and then also just like focus again, like always get a protein at every meal. Like protein is going to be king because that's going to be really what helps keep you satiated, it keeps you full, it helps with lean muscle, and it's going to help prevent you from overeating, really. So Usually if you try to keep your protein at every meal, if you have snacks, maybe like a protein kind of snack. And then also you could test yourself with tracking as well, right? Like, why don't you weigh out what you would want to eat intuitively and then like cover it and see what it actually is. Like, you can like kind of test and play around with it too. Like, maybe you just kind of guesstimate, right? And like play around with your eyeballing and your skills like that, and like don't look at what the scale says, and then, test yourself and look at it, and or weigh it afterwards or something, and then maybe you track like later just to see where everything added up.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, that's a great point as well, just on like, really paying attention while you track, because I think, not only is it going to help you intuitively eat down the road, but also like meals out, right? Or meals at like a friend's place or, buffet or whatever. Like, you can get a lot better idea of what you're eating then and be able to know a little bit more. Cause I know for me, like when I eat out, like I have a lot better idea just because I've tracked for a while of like what the sizes are of some of this food. And so it's like you can get an idea of like what the calories are and kind of know if it fits into your plan as well, depending on if you even wanted to, right? Like that's also, you could always just like enjoy yourself and stuff like that. But just kind of, I think it's a good point there. And I love it. This has been great. Like a lot of good just conversation, a lot of good just tips on really all over the board. We just kind of went to a lot of different areas, and I'd love to end with the final two questions. So you're the second person who has received these two questions, and I'm just I feel like a lot of podcasts, they have like a final thing, and like just
Yeah, they do.
I'd add something in that's like I can ask everybody just to get some interesting answers and see what we get. But so the first one is, what's the worst health and fitness or fat loss advice that you've ever received?
Shoot, this is tough. I think just for me, because it's so personal, I would say intermittent fasting. Like, personally, like for fat loss specifically, I don't think is the right approach, because at least I guess depending on how educated and how you are with food, um, it basically just drove me into worse eating patterns. And then also it's like I thought like I can eat however many calories I want as long as it's within this time frame, but that's not a calorie deficit, or that's not leading me into the right direction. So personally for me, it would probably be that one.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. I think that's a huge misconception, is like you can eat whatever you want during your 8 hours of eating, and you're gonna lose weight. It's like, oh, well, that's not how this works. Question number two, last question is, what's the best health and fitness advice that you've ever received?
Oh, these are good questions. I wish I had them in advance, honestly.
Hey, it
Let's
wouldn't be
see.
as like good though. If you already knew, then you wouldn't be like have to think a little bit. I just want to get you to think.
Oh God, Alex, you know how that is for me. So the best advice I ever heard, honestly, I feel like it's really what I've already said in this podcast, which is what Mind Pump said, because it just kind of clicked for me, where it's like, if you chase aesthetics, like, good health will not follow, or doesn't always follow, mostly doesn't. And then if you chase good health, aesthetics do follow. And that was kind of like mind blowing for me too, because it was like when I actually just like nourished my body and gave it what it needed, like, it was just easy and all the pieces came together, and I actually was like, I literally like how I look. Like, I genuinely like how I look. Like, I don't know why I felt the need to like restrict so much and do all this stuff, and it really just came down to like a lack of knowledge. um so I love that quote. That's like one of my favorites.
That is amazing. I do. I kind of figured it was going to be something that's already like from the podcast, but that is an amazing thing to just reiterate, because like it's so easy to just go down that fat loss road and just like run down it as far as you possibly can. But it is like, this is what I work on with my clients. This is what you talked about this already today. You work on this with your clients. Like, I always say that like when you get into the best health possible, fat loss becomes super easy, which is kind of like the same thing that you said there, where it's like if you focus on health, like you're going to make your life a lot easier when you do go into a calorie deficit. You probably will see good results in the process of that good health that you're making and the habits that you're actually putting together there.
Yeah, exactly. I think another one that kind of goes off of that is like train and eat like someone you love, right? So it's again like not choosing to beat yourself up, not trying to do that, but it's choosing how to like nourish yourself and love yourself and do it from like a good place and taking care of yourself.
Yes, amazing, amazing. And lastly, like, this has been amazing. First off, thank you so much for coming on, joining me, having a nice convo here. I'd like for you just to pimp yourself out and just tell everybody where they can find you.
Yeah, thank you. It's been awesome being on. This was so much fun for me. So I'm Jill G Fitness, Jill with a G, on Instagram and TikTok. Those are like my main platforms right now. Yeah, those are the ones I use the most.
Awesome. Well, go follow her. She has awesome content. And with that, thank you again for joining me, for coming on. Thanks everybody for watching, listening. Make sure you share this, you like, subscribe, send it to a friend, whatever you got to do. We appreciate the support and helps us grow and get the message out. So thank you, everybody. Thanks, Gillian, for popping on, and hope you have a good rest of your day.